Chair, we can start the meeting when you're ready.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'm Janetta Soshan and I chair this meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being streamed live on our website and being recorded. We're gradually getting used to these meetings, but hiccups do occur. So please bear with us if that happens at this meeting. A few reminders about the running of the meeting. When they're not actively participating in the meeting, I would ask everyone to keep their audio and video turned off. Any member wishing to speak should type an H in the chat box and I will call them when it is their turn to speak. All questions and contributions must come through the chair. And please remember to turn your video and audio on when I call you to speak. Any councillor with an interest in any item should declare it and keep their audio and video off when it is being considered. They will not be included in any vote on the subject. When it comes to a decision on any of the recommendations or motions before us, I will ask Mr. Mayfield, Democratic Services Officer, to conduct a formal vote on each. If we lose the live stream on the website, I will adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes and hopefully the problem can be fixed. If not, I will adjourn the meeting until a further date. Moving on, can I ask Brian, Democratic Services Officer, to explain attendance and apologies for absence. Thank you, Brian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Besides yourself, the members of the committee present at the moment are Councillors Lee Ashley, Helen Ayres, Paul Clark, substituting for Richard Highland, Sue Dobson, Julia Frustra, Tricia Hughes, Jenny Love, who's substituting for Graham Pooley, Richard Lee, Lance Mullane, who's one of the substitutes, but I don't know if he's substituting for anybody in particular, Tim Roper, Eleanor Sampson, Chris Shaw and Ian Wright. Also present is Councillor Natasha Dudley. We've had further apologies from Councillors Richard Porter and Bob Shepherd for this meeting.
All right.
The officers present are David Green, the Director of Sustainable Development, and from Planning Services, Keith Holmes, Sarah Hill-Sanders, Alex Sadowski, Jadviga Belsovic, Karen Short, Catherine Matheson and William Stanley. From Legal, William Butcher is present. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Declarations of interest comes next. This is item 3. All members are reminded that they must disclose any interest they know they have in items of business on the meeting's agenda, and that they must do so at this point on the agenda or as soon as they become aware of the interest. If the interest is a disclosable pecuniary one, they also need to notify the monitoring officer within 28 days. Now, I believe there are some. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just that I was the councillor recording item 9, so right. I'll speak when appropriate and then remove myself from proceedings until item 10. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest at this point? Okay, thank you. I'll move on to the minutes. Are you all agreed that the minutes for the 14th of July meeting are correct? I may need an agreement this way.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. That's fine. Thank you very much. Moving on to public question time. Any member of the public may ask a question or make a statement at this point in the meeting, provided that they have been invited to participate and have submitted their question or statement in writing and in advance. Each person has 2 minutes and a maximum of 15 minutes is allotted to public questions and statements. They must be about matters for which the committee is responsible. The chair may disallow a question if it is offensive, substantially the same as another question, or requires disclosure of exempt or confidential information. If the question cannot be answered at the meeting, a written response will be provided after the meeting. Where an application is returning to committee that has been deferred for a site visit, for further information or to consider detailed reasons for refusal, those who spoke under public questions at the previous meeting may not repeat their questions or statements. If you think about that in relation to item 6 this time. Those who have submitted a valid question or statement will be entitled to put it in person at the meeting, provided they have indicated they wish to do so and follow procedure. However, it would be best if these questions are put at the time the application is considered, and I'll call you then. Thank you. So the first item we have tonight is item 6, land southwest of Broadacres Lodge Road, Bicknaker. And since this has been deferred from a February meeting, only those members who were at that meeting can take part in this item. Do we have people who cannot take part in that item?
I was not there, so I can't take part. It's Councillor Frascona.
Thank you.
I was not there, so I can't take part. Councillor Chris Shaw.
Thank you.
And I wasn't there either. Councillor Large.
Thank you.
Councillor Sampson, I wasn't there either.
So there are not as many of us as usual, but I think enough. Brian, are you happy there are enough people?
Sorry, Chair, I wasn't there
Yeah,
either.
so before it.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, since it's a return, then I believe Sarah is going to give us an update, because it's been some time since we've seen any information on this. Sarah. Thank you. Sarah, I think your audio is off.
Members first considered this planning application for 6 bungalows in February earlier this year. Since members last considered this development proposal, the new local plan has been adopted and emerging policy CO5, referred to in previous officer report, has been renumbered and is now adopted policy DM8. The site lies outside the recently amended defined settlement boundary. Policy DM8 sets out the development types which will be permitted in rural areas, providing the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside is not adversely impacted. Within that policy, open market housing is not one of the exceptions, so the proposed development for 6 bungalows conflicts with policy DM8. At the meeting held in February, whilst officer view was that the development was acceptable in its own right, members deferred consideration, requesting that evidence is produced to show local demand for elderly accommodation in the area. The applicant has since February drafted a legal agreement which would restrict the occupation of the bungalows to those aged 55 or over and with the requisite local connection. The applicant has also provided letters from existing residents of Bicknaker and Woodham Ferrers who are aged over 55 and have set out in some detail why they would welcome development of this nature for age and health related reasons. A copy of the draft legal agreement and the letters from local residents are attached to your agenda papers. This is a balanced planning consideration. Against the proposal is the conflict with newly adopted planning policies, and planning law requires that planning applications are determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The applicant is putting forward material considerations in respect of local age-related need and support, together with the legal mechanism to control occupation. Officer view is that the development of this site as proposed won't harm the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside, and also that the site is well connected to local facilities and public transport. Officer recommendation is set out at the beginning of your committee papers for item 6. The officers be authorised to grant planning permission subject to conditions once the legal agreement as proposed by the applicant has been duly signed. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, your microphone is muted, I think.
Sorry. Yes, now we have that information. Does anyone who was at that meeting have anything extra to say about that application? I'm not getting, Councillor Jenny Large, do you wish to speak?
No, Chair, sorry, I put my hand up to withdraw from the
Right, thank you.
item at the beginning.
Okay, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. This may have been covered in the documents, but I couldn't find it. Just to clarify that no one is going to get caught out where there's 2 occupants. So if someone was over 55 and they were within their parish, but their partner was 45 and from outside the parish, that they still would be acceptable. There's only one person that needs to be qualifying. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak before Sarah comes back? Sue Dobson, yes? Councillor Dobson.
Hello, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I remember this application well. I was one of the main objectors, I think, initially regarding the fact that obviously I was concerned about the precedent of development, etc., in the rural area, and we went away obviously to get a legal agreement to actually for it actually to be for elderly people. I'm more than happy with the legal agreement that's been put forward, and there's obviously a need, and if the council officers are happy that there is a need, I'm more than happy to sort of confirm that I won't be objecting to it this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue. Anyone else before I go back to Sarah? No, unless Councillor Lee is intending to come back in.
Apologies, I put H twice.
Everyone's going for the H today, I think. Back to Sarah, please. Can you answer Richard's question?
Yes, Chair, I can answer that for you. The legal agreement that we've been supplied with says that a qualifying occupier must be over 55 and on the electoral register. So I think a partner would qualify long as a person living there qualified, and it includes tenants as well. So I think we're covered, and our legal officers have checked the unilateral undertaking quite carefully before we brought it to planning committee, and they were satisfied with the content.
Right, thank you. That was going to be my next question, so thank you for that.
Okay.
Unless there's anyone else wishes to speak, I suggest that the development as stated be approved, and that the Director of Sustainable Communities be authorised to grant planning permission subject to the planning conditions set out in the original document. I believe that's page 88 to 12 of the main report, and following completion of the legal agreement. Brian, can you now take a vote, please?
Yes, Chair, we'll need a seconder for that before I do that. Is there a second?
Indeed, yes, sorry. Can I have a seconder, please?
Seconded, Councillor Lee.
Councillor Lee, thank you.
Thank you. Chair, there's not many members qualified to vote on this particular application, as they weren't at the first meeting, but I'll read out the names of those who are, and if you could each indicate whether you're for or against the granting of the permission, subject to the legal agreement, or wish to abstain. So beginning with Councillor Ashley.
Agreed.
Councillor Ayres.
Councillor Ayres, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Roper.
For.
And the final one is
For.
Chair.
Sorry, I didn't hear who that was.
For Councillor Roper.
Oh,
Yes,
right,
we-
okay,
Yes,
yeah.
got that. Thank you.
And myself, yes?
Yes, please.
For.
Thank you. Well, in that case, Chair, the vote is unanimously for granting the planning application subject to the signing of the legal agreement.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Councillor Wright, I
Yes.
was at the last meeting.
I can't see you properly, Councillor
I
Wright.
apologise, Chair. I was just going by the list of names of the people who were shown in the minutes as being present. Councillor Wright wasn't shown, but if he assures me that he was there, then that's fine. How do you vote, Councillor Wright?
Well, in view of the fact there may be a discrepancy between the records, it would be better if I abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Brian?
Yes, Chair. The motion to approve the recommendation is still carried.
Right. Thank you very much. I found it very difficult to see you in. Perhaps you could try and put a light on or something. Right, moving on. Item 7 is the site at former Kids and Coffee, Hall Street, Chelmsford. Can I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. William Stanley, Planning Officer here.
Thank
This is
you.
item 7 on your agenda, which relates to the former Kids and Coffee site on Hall Street. The proposal is for the demolition of the existing building and the construction of 2 dwellings with integral garages. The application site is located within Hall Street, which is a built-up mixed-use street within Chelmsford City Centre, which contains dwellings, a public house and 2 churches. It also lies adjacent to the Molsham Street Conservation Area and close to the listed former Marconi factory on the junction with Marlborough May Road. This slide shows the application site. The photo in the top left-hand corner shows the building in operation as Kids and Coffee and dates from 2017. Kids and Coffee vacated the building in March 2019 and it was then sold 3 months later at auction in June 2019. The photo in the bottom right-hand corner shows the building in March 2020. It is now vacant and part of the roof is missing. The scheme proposes to demolish the existing building and construct in its place a pair of semi-detached houses. Officers are satisfied that the 2 houses would fit well in the street scene and would not harm the character of the area or the nearby heritage assets. It is also considered that the 2 dwellings would have an acceptable relationship with neighbours and have acceptable parking and garden provision. The main issue for consideration is whether the demolition of the existing building would result in the loss of a community facility. At a national policy level, paragraph 92 of the NPPF seeks to guard against the loss of valued community facilities. At a local level, policy DM21 of our new local plan also seeks to protect community facilities. It states that the change of use or redevelopment of the site is only acceptable when it complies with 3 policy criteria. Firstly, The premises or site cannot be readily used for or converted to any other community facility. Secondly, the facility or service which will be lost will be adequately supplied or met by an existing or new facility in the locality, which will be equivalent to or better than the facility that is lost. Finally, in relation to the loss of locally valued community facilities that are commercial in nature, evidence will need to be submitted to demonstrate that the use is not economically viable and that it is no longer required to meet the needs of the local community. Turning to the first criteria, the applicant has provided limited information to show that the building could not be reused. They have simply stated that due to the current form of the building, it could not be reused and that it would be very costly for community groups to repair. The applicants have not provided any information about how much it would cost to fix the building and why it could not be reused when it has been fixed. Turning to the second criteria, the applicant has provided information to show there are other children's play centres within 3 miles of the application site. This includes Wacky Warehouse and Mace Place. Officers are satisfied that these facilities are at least equivalent to and are likely better than those previously provided for Kids and Coffee. Finally, no evidence has been submitted to show that the previous use was not economically viable. It has also not been demonstrated that it is no longer needed to meet the needs of the community. In summary, officers are not satisfied that all 3 criteria of policy DM21 have been met. It would therefore be a harmful loss of community facilities. In conclusion, the proposal would result in the unacceptable loss of community facilities, contrary to both national and local policy. However, the 2 houses would be acceptable in all other respects. Refusal is recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have several members of the local residents who have sent in information. Brian, I believe you are intending to read most of them, but we have Susan Sawley, who intends to read it out in person. Susan, are you here? Can you put your video and microphone on, please?
Yes, of course. Can you hear me?
Thank you. I know these things take time.
Can everyone see me okay?
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Can you read your pitch, please?
Yes, I'm happy to read it out. So, good evening, everyone. I'm Susan Sorley. I'm a local resident and I own number 10 Alfred Mews on Hall Street. I fully support the approval of the application rather than the refusal. We moved into the property in 2014 and at that point we didn't have any children, so we never actually ventured into the Kids and Coffee building. It wasn't really required for our needs. However, in 2016, our son was born, and then 2018, I had a daughter. And therefore, in the 3 years between 2016 and it closing in 2019, I would have been considered sort of the perfect target customer for this local community business that occupied the premises. So you would think that by having this on my doorstep, I would make use of the facilities regularly. However, it didn't really live up to expectations, and I chose instead to take my children to other soft play areas and other stay and plays that were in the local area, and some even where I had to drive to them. In my opinion, the closing of this business has not been a loss of valued facilities and services as it is stated by the local planning officers, and that's what they're arguing as the reason for refusal. I felt that the site wasn't really big enough to run this type of business, and I can't see how the location could be viable to run another business or a different community service that we don't already need in our street. I've recently objected to a proposed development on Mildmay Road where the developer sought to create 4 flats on a small footprint. So I'm pleasantly surprised to see that this developer has proposed to create 2 houses instead of attempting to use the site to create flats for his personal maximum gain. So it would be great to welcome 2 new families to this lovely area, and the inclusion of the garages, I think, to provide that much needed off-street parking is a welcome bonus as well. So I think my final point would be that the existing building is a complete eyesore and didn't really fit into the character of the rest of the street. The current state of the building, with half the roof missing, has meant it potentially has the ability to attract vandals and antisocial behaviour, which I'm quite concerned about if the plans don't go ahead. And I think given the current global pandemic and the crisis that this has caused for people, the last thing that we want is a derelict, half-demolished building in our street, which would be unsafe. Instead, we should be looking to the future and allowing the developer to build these new fantastic 2 houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I'll move on then. I believe Brian is going to speak for Green O'Keefe.
I think, Chair, she's in person at the meeting and wishes to do so herself if she's able to do so.
Are you there, Graham?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Hello.
If you can pop your video on so I can see you as well.
Should be on.
Yes, it's on. We can see you. Thank you.
Got you now. Yes, thank you. Sometimes these things take time. Okay, if you're happy to read this, thank you. Please carry on.
Thank you. I'm also a resident living at Alfred Mews on Hall Street, and I fully support the redevelopment of the site for 2 houses. I suppose in considering the issue of the refusal, the loss of the community facilities, I wanted to make you aware of the wide range of facilities that we do already enjoy on Hall Street. It's a really short street of just 200 metres, but we are lucky to enjoy 2 places of worship. There's a large community hall with a number of meeting rooms that are used for all sorts of community uses, where we have our polling station on election time, for example. Cable's House is used as an after-school club and by local scouting groups. We have Oliver House, occupied by a range of counselling and therapy clinics. We also have the Royal Air Force Association, the RAFA Social Club, which host coffee mornings on Saturdays and other social events that are open to the community. Footprints Day Nursery is here, which caters for preschool children. And we also have 2 public houses, the Woolpack and O'Connor's, who host a range of social events, including weekly table quiz, which we all enjoy going to, live music events, etc., free of charge. So on this really small street on Hall Street, we really are lucky that we benefit from a wide variety of community facilities. They cater to a variety of interest groups as well as age groups, I think. All our neighbours, we value those community facilities and we use them regularly. However, the Kids and Coffee site is a different matter. The existing building has been vacant now for over 18 months and it is becoming more and more dilapidated. I would be concerned, based on its city centre location as well, that it could become a destination for antisocial behaviour if it doesn't become redeveloped in the near future. And for those reasons, I really don't think that it would affect, the redevelopment would affect the community's ability to meet its day-to-day needs, as cited in the officer's report for refusal, as we will continue to have access to a wide range of community facilities on our doorsteps that do meet our needs and that we do actively use on a regular basis. And along with that, living in the city centre, we have within a very short walking distance access to many more community and other social facilities. The houses themselves appear to be very well designed, would integrate into the street. They incorporate parking garages, work from home spaces, and I think they will be a really positive contribution to our neighbourhood where we live, and I personally would love to see this development happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Brian, I believe John Crisp has written as well.
Yes, Chair, and I'll read it out for you.
Please.
He submits a statement on. Yeah. Jonathan Crisp works for Arcadia Architects, who are the agents for the application, and he submitted a statement on behalf of the applicants. It reads, "We would like to say that there has been positive engagement with the planning officer and conservation officer during the early stages of the application. We have made minor alterations to the proposal to ensure that the scheme design meets with approval. It is the requirements of policy DC21 which hamper approval of the proposed development of 2 houses with off-street parking. In brief, we would like to point out the following. 1, we have no objections from any statutory consultees other than the policy team. 2, we have no neighbour objections and 5 letters of support. 3, we have the support of the Conservation Officer on the proposed design and detailing. Local policy DC21 protects the loss of valued community facilities. We acknowledge this. We have provided evidence that we have collated to date, supporting the fact that no one has ever shown any interest in this property for a community use since the previous Kids and Coffee business closed. We could, given time, run a marketing campaign to address the further points raised by the policy team, but it is clearly evident that this will be a waste of time and money. Our application was submitted on the 11th of March 2020, and the new planning policy DC21 was adopted in May this year. Although weight could be applied to the emerging policy, we do feel that the policy team are being very strict in their application of the new rules to this scheme. The site is poorly located within a one-way street with no off-street parking for clients. There are much better facilities with sustainable transport provision nearby and further afield. Details are provided within our application. We are grateful to Councillor Pooley for requesting this application to be heard at committee and to the local residents who have taken time to express their support. Most people only have a right to complain or object, so this is a strong indication that local people want this to be taken forward and that the loss of the existing building will not be detrimental to the area. We do feel that this is a scheme which would benefit from a common sense debate where we trust we will gain your support. Our client can then construct the new dwelling, making a positive contribution to this important part of Chelmsford. That's the statement from Mr. Crisp, Chair.
Thank you. I believe that covers everyone. So I'll open it to the committee. Who would like to speak about this issue? I'm not getting anyone at the minute. I would like some discussion.
Madam Chairman, again, I have typed the letter H into the chat line, and obviously you're not getting that from me.
I'm not, yes, sorry.
So can I have your permission to speak?
Of course you can.
And I hope you now see me.
Not really. I can hear you.
Right, okay. Having carefully looked at this application and looked at the state of the building, I don't think anybody would ever invest money to put that building back into such a condition that it could be used for a community purpose. There would be no profit there for anybody. And so I think as much as I agree with the sentiments of the planning officer in trying to keep these community buildings alive, I think this is totally a lost cause, and I will be voting that houses are permitted to be built there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hello, it's Councillor.
Oh, yes, I put H in.
Put H in as well.
Yeah. I'm not sure why you can't see our H's.
I can't see you, no.
Oh. May I speak then? I did put an H in.
Now I can. Now I can.
Right.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would really like to concur with everything Councillor Wright said, but just to add that in particular, I was very impressed with the list of community facilities that do already exist in that area. And I would agree that I can't see any real likely community facility taking on that building, given that the last people obviously didn't find it commercially successful either and went, and that nobody appears to have shown interest since. And I would also be voting in favour of granting planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I would. Councillor
Foscona.
Hello. Yeah, I agree with the previous two councillors.
Can you put your video on, please?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with the other two councillors who spoke, and I also am particularly impressed with the residents and the very clear and organised way they put their views forward. And I really think they have an unanswerable case, really. That as Councillor Shaw said, the local facilities are good, and as Councillor Wright said, the building itself is just semi-derelict and it really couldn't be run viably by any business. So I too will be voting in favour of allowing the houses to be built.
Thank you. In that case, unless there's anyone else.
Sorry, I also wanted to speak.
Chair, I put an H in too.
Thank you, Jenny. Again, we seem to be having trouble with getting the photographs up tonight. Oh, there you are.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea that Kids and Coffee wasn't economically viable, because I'm not sure that there's been any evidence submitted that that was the case. And having visited Kids and Coffee 1 or 2 weeks before it closed, that wasn't the impression that I had from the facility. I appreciate that the current owners weren't dealing with the business Kids and Coffee, and so maybe they don't know the whole history there. I also, while I appreciate there's lots of other facilities maybe in this particular local area, I feel that the loss of Kids and Coffee actually was detrimental to the Chelmsford community as a whole. I appreciate that places like Mace Place and Wacky Warehouse exist, but they are much larger. And actually, and one of the residents has similar aged children to myself and clearly wasn't keen on Kids and Coffee. But for me, having, and many other parents with preschool aged children, actually having the smaller, more intimate environment was better, because you could sit and be very close to your children while they were playing. And it was, from that point of view, it felt much a kind of a safe place to be. And I know that so a year before Kids and Coffee closed, Rocky's, which was a similar style in that it was quite small and intimate, also closed. So actually, currently Chelmsford doesn't have that kind of smaller soft play. Having said that, it wasn't noted in the planning notes, but actually Riverside now has since opened since Kids and Coffee with a slightly smaller soft play. Also, I'd note that Mace Place actually were planning in March this year to open a smaller soft play for preschools children in the city centre, which I think that the fact that they were planning to do that, they saw that there was a need there that wasn't being met. So actually, I do feel that the loss of Kids and Coffee, as a community facility, I do think that was a detriment to Chelmsford community. Having said that, the building as it is clearly in a very poor state now. So that probably will have some impact on my final decision about this. I did want to ask a question of the officers, because the applicant brought up the idea that the policy that was adopted in the local plan was adopted after the initial planning application has gone in. I was wondering what effect that then has on the planning application that was submitted beforehand, and now here we are a little bit later, and we're applying a policy that didn't exist when they first submitted their application. So I was wondering how that impacted on how we should make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else who wants to speak here,
please, Chair.
Julia, are you still wishing to speak again?
Yes, I would like to just
okay.
Make a point.
If you come back, I'll go to the officers in a minute.
I agree with Jenny that a small, intimate soft play area is an attractive option, but I think the problem was the location meant that there was nowhere for parents to park or drop their children off, so that was one of the reasons it wasn't viable. Whereas the Mace Place, the new one at the bottom of Springfield Road, has got parking behind it, and it's well situated from that point of view, and has the facilities to make it viable. So I mean, I completely see what Jenny means about the small, intimate environment. but it just wasn't clearly the right place for it when there was nowhere to park and nowhere to drop children off and all that sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you. I think Eleanor?
Chair, could I speak? Sorry.
Yes,
Sue
please.
Dobson.
Oh, Sue, I've got Eleanor Sampson. Sorry, Sue, if you can hold on.
Yes, you came in a little bit before me.
Oh, well, you're fighting over me. That's the point. Okay, Eleanor, can you speak? And then we'll go to Sue.
Yeah, of course. So this is a question, and it might be more for the officers than for the other members.
Yeah.
But if we were to continue with the recommendation and decline this, given that their property has been sold and there hasn't been other interest in the community service that we've heard about, is there a danger that that site will remain undeveloped, you know, for an indeterminate amount of time?
Okay, that's two questions for the officer. Sue.
Right, thank you, Chair. Got there in the end. Whenever I look at an application, it's always, obviously the officers have sort of the recommended refusal because of it's against policy. And if we're considering as a committee against policy, there's got to be very, very good reasons for it. And for me, whilst it is a loss of community facility, all the other boxes are ticked in as much as the proposed development that is going to potentially replacing this building is fully acceptable. There's local support, there's an abundance of other community facilities, because we're not necessarily, whilst it was a children's play area before, we're not necessarily going to be marketing it as another children's play area. It could be anything. It could be a hall of worship or whatever. This area has obviously got a lot of community facilities, and again, the building's in a dilapidated state, and I concur with the other residents as well, saying that, you know, it is a concern with a dilapidated building in the area. So I would really echo what Councillor Wright initially said, and you know, on this occasion there is very good reason to depart from policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't anyone else, so can I go back to the officer, please? Who is speaking?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hiya.
Can't
Just
see you, but I can hear you.
Oh.
Can you remind me of your name?
It's William Stanley.
Thank you.
So just to try and answer some of those questions, from Councillor Large, you know, obviously her question was regard to the policy. We did have a pre-application discussions with Arcady in December of last year, when what is now policy DM21 was an emerging policy at that stage. So they were fully aware of the policy that was coming into place. Our previous policy had similar wording. I think it was slightly worded slightly differently, but it had similar wording in terms of protecting community facilities. So whilst the new local plan was adopted, obviously pre this determination, they were aware of that fact, and it would have been hoped, obviously, they presented their planning application on that basis, given that's the information we discussed at the pre-app stage, when they were also advised to do marketing reports and to seek out the advice of community groups, which unfortunately they haven't done as part of this process. Hopefully that answers that question. In terms of Councillor Sampson's question, in terms of the undeveloped building, obviously it's now owned by a developer who wishes to put houses on there. We obviously can't force him to sell the property, but they could do marketing reports if they wanted to show that it complies with DM 21. But if they didn't want to do that, we can't force them to sell it, and it could end up as undeveloped. But that would obviously be up to the applicant to decide what they wish to do with their site, as we obviously don't have control over where they go forward with it. Hopefully that answers the questions, but I'm happy to answer any further if needs be. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, obviously, there are several of you now who have spoken against policy. Is there anyone who wishes to put a proposal against, or shall I just put the proposal as is and see whether it falls?
Sorry, Chair, I had an H in the chat box, so a question was, I'd like to ask a further question.
Councillor Lee, sorry.
I appreciate that I believe this is in a conservation area. I like the design as it is, but I'd just like clarification from the officers if in future, if a garage conversion were to take place, that would require a full planning application, and if not, I would like to see a condition saying that remains a garage forevermore due to the parking issues along that road. Thank you.
Thank you. William, can you take that up? You may need to...
Yeah, I can do. Yes, it's just outside the conservation area, but it is obviously very, very close to the conservation area. In terms of the garage condition, obviously, if members were minded to recommend approval, we could have put a condition on that requires the garages to only be used as for the parking of vehicles, which would mean that they would need a full planning application if they wanted to convert it to anything else. So that could be something that we could put on as a planning condition if members were minded to recommend approval.
You mean recommend approval to refuse?
No, sorry, if they were to overturn the refusal and to go forward and recommend approval, then it could be something if they were minded to overturn the current refusal recommendation and approve it, then we could put a condition on for the garage to prevent the garage from being used for anything else other than parking.
Does this seem appropriate? Sorry. Go on, say some more then.
In terms of from where we are, that condition is something that we would probably look to put forward if that were recommended, if members were minded to think that way. Thank you.
Thank you. We're in a bit of a cleft stick with this one. Is anyone recommending refusal, or do we go to a vote? Councillor Wright, I know I can't always see you, but if you put your microphone on and video, could you? Thank you. You were the first one to suggest that this refusal should be overturned. Is there any more you wish to say?
Yeah, in view of what we've heard this evening, it is obvious that the committee is mindful of granting this application against the recommendation of the officer. So therefore, I think this application should be returned to the officers for further consideration and then to come back to this committee.
So are you proposing that?
Yes, I'm quite happy to propose that, Madam Chairman.
Do we have a seconder for that?
Yes, I'll second it. Seconded.
Right, thank you very much. In that case, we are overturning the officer's recommendation, and we'll ask that it comes back to this committee for further information.
Madam Chairman, if I can just briefly interrupt, we are saying that the committee is mindful, and then of course we will make the final decision when we get the planning officer's comments.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. In that case, we'll move on I am having trouble tonight. I'm sorry if people don't hear me.
Chair,
I'm not hearing them terribly well, so I'm doing my best.
Madam Chair.
Chair, should we take a formal vote on that, just to be absolutely clear that that is the agreed view of the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, I'll put Councillor Wright's motion to each member of the committee in turn, if they could indicate whether they're for or against, beginning with Councillor Ashley.
Agreed with Councillor Wright's recommendation and Councillor Lee's recommendation that the garage shouldn't ever be converted.
Thank you. Councillor Ayres?
Yeah, I am also for Councillor Wright's proposal and Councillor Lee's proposal about the garage.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Dobson?
For.
Councillor Stoner?
For.
Councillor Hughes?
For.
Councillor Large?
Against.
Councillor Lee?
For.
Councillor Roper?
For.
Councillor Sampson?
For.
Councillor Shaw?
For.
Yourself, Chair?
For.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
Chair, everybody apart from one person is in favour of what Councillor Wright suggested, so it will come back to committee for formal consideration at a future meeting. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. We'll move on now, thanks everybody, to 38 Bodmin Road. Can we have the officer's report, please? Here we are.
Good evening, Chair. I am Alex Sadowski, Planning Officer. This presentation relates to item 8 on your agenda for 38 Bodmin Road, Chelmsford. The application proposes a single-storey side and two-storey rear extensions to the existing dwelling. Number 38 sits on the southeast side of Bodmin Road, as shown with the red outline on this slide. The neighbouring properties are number 36 to the southwest and number 40 to the northeast. The photograph on this slide shows you the front of the application site and the two neighbouring properties. The application property is a chalet-style detached dwelling. The neighbouring property number 36 is similarly a chalet-style detached dwelling. Number 40, the other side neighbour, is an end-of-terrace three-storey dwelling. The photograph on this slide shows the front elevation of the application site and the front elevation of the proposed side extension. You will see that there is an existing side driveway to number 38. The proposed single-storey side extension would be constructed on this side driveway towards a neighbouring property number 36. The main issue in terms of this application is the relationship between the application site and the neighbouring property number 36. The photo on this slide shows the northeast side elevation to the neighbouring property number 36. You will be able to see this neighbour side window circled in red. This window serves the intermediate landing and does not serve any rooms in the neighbouring property. It is therefore considered a secondary window. This slide shows the relationship between the application site and the neighbouring property number 36. The two-storey rear extension is outlined in orange, and the single-storey side and rear extension is outlined in blue. The side extension has a combination roof with a lower flat roof section immediately opposite the neighbour's side window. This is outlined in red. Measurements of the site have been taken during the application, and the indicative location of the neighbour's side landing window is shown by the green box. The photo on this slide is taken from inside number 36. As can be seen, this side window serves the stairs and intermediate landing of this neighbouring property. This slide shows the current outlook from the neighbour's picture side window. As can be seen from the photos, this window directly faces towards the side elevation of the application site. Whilst views from this window would change and the extensions would extend built form closer to this window, it would not be harmful to the amenity of the neighbouring property. In conclusion, and as you will have read from the report, it is officers' view that the extensions and development are well designed and would not be harmful to the character of the area. It is also officers' view that the single-storey height of the proposed side extension, together with the neighbour's side window being a secondary window, that the proposal would not be harmful to the amenity of any neighbouring properties. As such, and as set out, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I believe we have Natasha Dudley who would like to speak, councillor for the local area, I believe. Natasha.
Yes, good evening. I'm the one of the ward councillors for the Lawns, and I have called in this application because I am extremely concerned about its effect on the quality of life for the homeowners at number 36. In particular, the loss of amenity due to the impact on their access to daylight. Like many other houses in Bodmin Road, this house was designed with a very large picture window at the side, providing light for the hall, the stairs and the landing. And the houses have been deliberately spaced with well over a car's width between them to ensure that the light can get to the window. It's a fundamental practical feature of the house design, and this is the side, as you've seen, where the neighbour's extension is planned. Therefore, it is clear to me that the proposed extension will inevitably diminish their access to daylight, and this in turn will also affect their day-to-day life, since to get from any room to any other room in the house, the residents will have to go via either the hall, the stairs or the landing, and that is the area where the light will be diminished. And I feel that should the extension go ahead, they will inevitably have to have the lights on all day to compensate for the loss of light. And for this reason, I object to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we've got anyone else who actually wants to speak.
Chair, we've had a statement in from
sorry. Yes.
Paul Hudson on behalf of the occupants of 36
Yes.
Bodmin Road, if you'd like me to read it.
Yes, please.
Thank you. It reads, with regard to the above, you state in your communication dated 20th of August 2020 to our son Paul Hudson that you will be recommending the above application for approval. We would ask you to apply due diligence to the following. We have earlier submitted to you our valid objections to the proposed extension of number 38 and would ask that you reconsider your decision, as we feel that there are very real and appropriate reasons why this application should be refused, in particular with regard to the side extension. The overpowering extension and the obscuring of 0.7 metres of our large side window will have an extremely negative effect on our home. Regarding the design and layout issues in paragraph 6.5 of the committee report, we suggest that the side development of number 38 will not respect the character and appearance of number 36 and will in fact have a detrimental and adverse effect. With regard to neighbour amenity, the safeguarding amenity should be rigorously applied to the large side window regarding the light and safety aspect of the staircase. You state in your report at paragraph 6.7 that the side window receives limited sunlight. Therefore, as much light as possible is needed to light the interior. This will be severely compromised with such a side extension. It is also somewhat unusual for a side extension to be built right up to the boundary, with all the disputes which may occur when building. Due to the extreme close proximity of the proposed structure, which is less than 1 metre, there are serious concerns about the real risk of structural damage to our property when digging footings and foundations and drainage, etc. Although this is a building matter, we have not seen any surveyor's reports with regard to the aforementioned. The extension will be built with considerable disadvantages to us. And in conclusion, we do not consider that there has been any compromise from number 38 regarding our comments and concerns. That concludes the statement, Chair.
Thank you. Did the officer wish to come back at this point before I open it to the committee? Sarah.
Hello, Chair. I'm not really too sure what you wish us to come back on. We've seen the photographs from inside the neighbour's house, from their landing window. We acknowledge that the extension will come close to that window, but the extension on the side has been designed to have a cutout in the roof opposite where the neighbour's window sits, to try as far as possible to be as low as possible at that particular point. It's a landing, it's not a main habitable room, and I appreciate the comments made by Councillor Dudley that it allows light for circulation throughout the house. But as planning officers, we simply don't give so much weight to amenity to a hall stairs and landing as we would do, for example, to the main lounge or the main kitchen window. Comments about other extensions close to the boundary. There are other examples in the street of single-storey extensions to the boundary. If you wish, I can try and share my screen and show you such an example. Hopefully, does that show a couple of examples in the street scene at number 34 and number 16 in particular? So it's not uncommon to have single-storey extensions close to neighbouring boundaries and neighbouring windows. Does that answer your questions, Chair, hopefully?
Yes, I think so. Okay, thank you. Councillor Scott, I'll open it to the committee now. Councillor Frascona.
Hello. I just wanted to ask whether I think the residents at number 38, their son said that the window with their side window would be obscured 0.7 of a metre. So more than half a metre would be where the window would be right up against the brick wall of the extension. Is that correct?
Sarah?
Chair, I'm just waiting for the case officer just to advise me on that detail, if you can bear with me a moment.
Yes, of course.
Correct. I'm being told correct by the case officer.
So it would be very, very, how far, what is the actual distance between the window and the extension? Do you know? Is it?
The window itself sits 2.2 metres up from the ground, and then there is a gap of 0.9 metres between the window and the extension. So,
okay, so
it's 3 foot in old money.
Yeah, 3 foot away, there'd be a brick wall obscuring kind of half of their window, their side window. Yeah,
that's right. That's what's happening. Okay, shall I leave you to think about it and see who else wishes to speak? Julia, it's okay? Right, anyone else wish to speak on this? It's a very quiet one tonight. Councillor Wright, you're not trying to get through, are you?
Councillor Lee has indicated, Chair.
Right, okay, Councillor Lee, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I know this application reasonably well, being the ward member for this area. I would like to say I'm not predetermined. The officer said that this would not be harmful to number 36. I would disagree. There will be an element of harm. As has been discussed, this side window, which is very large, will be covered. Respectfully, there's a distance, 90 centimetres away, by about a third. That window does serve the hall, landing and stairs. To get from any room to any other room in that house, you have to go via the hall, landing or stairs. I do feel it will have an impact, but I am struggling to quantify if that will be a sufficient enough, a substantial impact. But there will be an impact. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I think that was acknowledged by the officers as well. I don't have anyone else at the moment. Jenny Lodge, Councillor Lodge.
Hello. I had a question about the walkway between the extension and the house, because it will be quite narrow, but I was wondering if it's currently, is it a gate that goes into the neighbour's garden at the moment, or is it just a fence?
Maybe we could look at the photograph at the front again.
Chair, can I help? Chair, can I, if with your permission, can I help you with a slide that will answer Councillor Large's query? Bear with me.
Yeah.
That's the gateway to the neighbour's property.
Thank you.
Okay.
There are several pictures there.
Oh, I can show.
But that's the main one. That gap won't alter. Their gap won't alter. It's just the house will be nearer on the other side of the fence.
Correct.
Right. Anyone else?
Just
I
one
don't see
comment.
anyone.
Yes.
Councillor Wright. Yeah. Councillor Frascona, did you want to come back?
Yeah, having thought about it, I agree with Councillor Lee that there will be a disadvantage to the residents at 36, and they, having that brick wall right very close to their window, part of their window, will definitely be a disadvantage. But I agree that I'm not sure it's enough of a disadvantage. I think they will still get quite a lot of light from the top 2/3 of their window, but it won't. I don't think it will be dark in their hall or stairs, and it's obviously a massive disadvantage to the neighbours if they can't complete their extension as planned. So it's difficult to balance it, but I think maybe on balance we should allow the extension.
Right, okay. If there isn't anyone else, and I see no one indicating, I would propose that the development be approved, subject to the conditions on page 6. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. In which case, can we have a vote, please, Brian?
Yes, Chair, the motion is to approve the application.
Yep.
So beginning with Councillor Ashley, do you agree with that?
For.
Councillor Ayres?
Against.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Frascona?
Councillor
For.
Frascona, we lost you.
For. Yeah, I'm here. For.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hughes?
Against.
Councillor Large?
For.
Councillor Lee?
Against.
Councillor Roper?
For.
Councillor Sampson?
For.
Councillor Shaw?
For.
Yourself, Chair?
For.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
So, Chair, that's 10 in favour of granting the application, 3 against, so the motion to grant it is carried.
Thank you very much. That development has then been approved. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item 9, which is 22 South Hanningfield Way, Runwell, Chelmsford. So can we have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Jadwiga Balcevich, Planning Officer. This application is for a single-story front extension, a single-story rear extension, and a raised patio. The application site outlined in red is located within the defined settlement of Runwell. The application house is a detached bungalow on the eastern side of the road. The property sits within a row of detached bungalows. The yellow on this slide indicates extensions to the neighboring bungalows that range from 3 meters to more than 6 meters in depth, and some have more than 1 story. The red boxes illustrate the proposed front extension and the already constructed rear extension to the application house. This slide shows the proposed development. The single-story rear extension is 5 meters in depth and 4 meters in height, including the roof lantern. The raised patio is proposed to be approximately 96 centimeters in height. The proposed privacy screen would be 1.8 meters in height from the top of the raised patio and would be 3.6 meters in depth. The proposed block plan on this slide shows the position of the rear extension and the raised patio in relation to the neighboring properties. The single-story rear extension is positioned approximately 3.4 meters from the side elevation of number 24 and 3.2 meters from the side elevation of number 20. The extension projects approximately 1.1 meters beyond the rear elevation of number 24. The same extension projects approximately 3.6 meters beyond the rear elevation of number 20. The raised patio to the rear is 5 meters in depth and has 2 sets of steps to the lower patio. The lower patio would be 0.3 meters in height and would be considered permitted development. Here we can see the application site in relation to its neighbors. The photograph shows the partially completed single-story rear extension and the raised patio. On the right side is number 24 and on your left is number 20. Number 24 is located to the north of the application site and has been extended in the past. This neighboring property has been extended with a single-story rear extension that measures approximately 6.4 meters in depth. A raised patio has also been constructed to this property. The original boundary fence between number 24 and the application site, on your left, was low, resulting in some mutual overlooking between these 2 properties. The low boundary fence has been recently replaced and now provides sufficient privacy for number 24 and the application site.
Somebody has their,
Number 20 Way is located to the south of the application site. This neighbouring site has been extended in the past and also has a raised patio to the rear. The existing low fence between this neighbouring site and the application property results in some mutual overlooking between these two sites. Here, a photograph taken from the inside of number 20 looking towards the application site. Only a corner of the rear extension is visible. The rear patio is also only partially visible. It is acknowledged, however, that the proposed rear patio within the application site extends further into the garden, allowing slightly different views towards the rear of number 20. To ensure that no intrusive overlooking would occur from the proposed rear patio towards the rear of number 20, a privacy screen is proposed. The proposed privacy screen would be visible from this neighbouring site. However, it would not result in a loss of view for number 20. It would not result in overshadowing effects because it would be positioned to the north of this neighbour. Also, the proposed privacy screen would be set away from the boundary with number 20 by about 1.1 meters and would result in no adverse overbearing impacts on the amenities of this neighbour. The privacy screen would prevent any direct overlooking of number 20 once sitting out on the raised patio. Details and materials of the proposed screen are conditioned and are required to be submitted for approval by the Council to ensure that appropriate materials are used in construction of the proposed privacy screen. In conclusion, the proposed development is considered to fit well within the established street scene and would result in no harm to the character of the area. The relationship with the neighbouring properties are considered to be acceptable. The Council's recommendation is to grant retrospective planning permission. Thank you.
Right, now, we had an email today with some content from a neighbour, Mr. and Mrs. Avis. So, Brian, you consented to read that because apparently it went to the wrong place in the beginning.
Yes, it did, Chair, but we accepted it as a valid comment for your consideration. It reads, we are somewhat dumbfounded, shocked and disappointed that Chelmsford City Council appear to have ignored all requests for site visits, considering the sheer volume of inaccurate measurements stipulated on the numerous plans and drawings submitted by the applicant when myself, my neighbour at number 24 and Runwell Parish Council have clearly demonstrated and proved that these measurements do not match that which has already been built and in situ. We have submitted an online breach of planning regarding this, being promised a site visit regarding the breach, which was later retracted by Chelmsford City Council, and it is abundantly evident from the many instances of inaccurate information and measurements stated on the agenda for this planning application that the measurements from what has already been built have not been certified by the council or an independent surveyor, as many of the measurements on the numerous submitted plans and drawings nowhere near match that against which has actually been built, as they differ quite drastically. The fact that Chelmsford City Council want to brush all of the objections aside without an investigation or verification of measurements in question is abhorrent and frankly morally wrong. Some aspects of what has been built are both illegal and in breach of your own regulations. We have photo evidence to back up these objections and breaches. That's the statement, Chair.
Thank you. I think I would like to go back to the officer straight away and get some comments on that particular piece of information. Have these incorrections been investigated? And are we in a position to say that what we're looking at is what we should be looking at?
Chairman, thank you. You will have seen from the presentation that the case officer has been to the site. It was partly built at the time, but we have been there. We don't think there's anything fundamentally inaccurate with the drawings or what has been built. We think there might be, maybe not to do a disservice to the neighbour, but maybe some confusion between some of the stated distances or heights shown on the drawings, because there is a level difference on the site, and where the back of the extension fits onto the existing house, for example, and the height is stated on the drawings, I think at 2.8 metres, the corresponding height at the end of the extension, to take into account the changing ground levels, is going to be taller than 2.8 metres. I don't have that written dimension on the drawings, but we think possibly the neighbour thinks that 2.8 height should be the end of the extension, where it won't be because of the level change in the garden. There's nothing illegal. We're not in the realms of anything being built here being illegal, and we don't send out surveyors, as you know, to certify measurements. We've been to the site, and we are content that what is there is a fair representation of what is on the drawings. And bearing in mind, it's a building site. When we saw it, levels of ground are scraped away. It's not easy to be able to ascertain whether the patio is 30 centimetres tall or 39 centimetres tall, because of how the ground is scraped away at that particular moment in time. So we don't have any significant cause for concerns in terms of what's been built.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass on to Councillor Paul Clark, who is next to speak. I just wanted to get that clear first. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I called this in at the request of the neighbours on both sides of the property and the parish council. I wasn't at that parish council meeting when they were unanimous in their opinions on this development and that it shouldn't be allowed in its current form. I visited the site recently, and I viewed the site from the neighbours' land on both sides, and it was clear to me the dimensions do not reflect the actual layout of the site. The amount of land shown was incorrect on the lower end of the garden, because it actually belongs to the owner of number 24, but it's shown as number 22 on the plans. And as you'll be aware, there have been numerous changes to this application, not least because the dimensions were incorrect, and the ones before you still are. The original application for a single-storey extension has been completed. It is higher than the original application, but there is no objection. But to say this is in line with neighbouring properties is not correct either. It is higher than the other surrounding extensions. The plans do not show the gradient of the land away from the property. Therefore, where other patios step down, either from the extension or within a short distance, they more or less follow the contour of the land. And in this case, the patio actually extends much further and horizontally, to the point where the patio is actually at the same height as the dividing fence between number 20 and 22. Therefore, the top of the proposed privacy screen suggests in the plans is approximately 3 metres from the ground level. This would be 1.8 metres for the privacy screen, plus 1.2 metres, not 0.96 as displayed in the plans. This makes this very intrusive in nature, and the owner at number 20 has asked me to make that point. This is acknowledged in 6.9 of the report. The dividing fence belongs to the owner of number 20 and is approximately 1.2 metres in height, but steps down with the contour of the land. The report does mention policy DM29 of our recently adopted local plan, and I can just, if I could just remind the members, but it says development proposals must safeguard the amenities of occupiers of any nearby residential property by ensuring that development is not overbearing and does not result in an unacceptable overlooking or overshadowing. In my opinion, and hopefully the members will concur, this is overbearing, and the neighbour at number 20 is significantly overlooked, which is contrary to DM 29 of the plan and should be refused. I would also point out that a considerable amount of work has been done on the site since the officer's visit on the 1st of July. The applicant has continued to build the patio after the officer apparently advised they should not do this until the application had been determined. The owner of number 20, as you've already heard, submitted a claim for breach of planning and was advised nothing could be done until this application was determined. But the applicant has continued to do the work regardless. On the other side of the property, there's a new fence that you saw in the photographs.
Yeah.
The measurement of this fence is approximately 2.15 metres in places and higher as you go down the garden. From the applicant side, it is even higher because it has 2 gravel boards. When the neighbours were made aware of this original extension, they did not object. The additional work to the rear has caused their objection, and I urge members to reject this application on the intrusive nature of the patio area. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have to remove myself, of course.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much for that information, though. All helps. Right, shall I open that now to the committee, please? Can I have comments? Comments come in very slowly on this. Councillor Wright is possibly going to speak.
Yes, indeed. I've looked at this application, obviously, very carefully. In view of what Councillor Clark, who has visited the site itself, that is why, quite rightly, he's now removed himself from the rest of this hearing. It does concern me. It is so important that this council is seen to be acting fairly, and perhaps this is a sort of time we should go and look at this site. The measurements are all being queried by more than one person, being queried by one of our councillors, and I think we ought to be seen to be fair and attend and have a site visit, and we can then see for ourselves. There's a lot of questions here that need answering. So I would propose that we have a site visit so that we can see for ourselves exactly what is going on at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Who was that?
Seconded. Councillor Ashley.
Thank you very much. I have a proposal for a site visit. Can I have a vote, please?
Yes, Chair. If each member could indicate whether they're in favour of that proposal for a site visit, beginning with Councillor Ashley.
Agreed. 4.
Councillor Ayres.
4.
Councillor Dobson.
4.
Councillor Frascona.
4.
Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Large.
4.
Councillor Lee.
4.
Councillor Roper. Councillor Roper. We'll come back to Councillor Roper. Councillor Sampson.
4.
Councillor Shaw.
4.
Yourself, Councillor Sozin.
4.
And Councillor Wright.
4.
Just going back to Councillor Roper, are you there? No. In that case, Chair, those who have voted unanimously in favour of holding a site visit.
Thank you very much. In that case, it is adjourned for a site visit. Thank you, everyone. Councillor Clark can turn on his phone on again if he wishes. Are you back in, Councillor Clark?
I am. Thank you.
Thank you. We have adjourned this for a site visit. Right, moving on. The next item is item 10, Bewley Outline Planning Permission, which is the first viability review. I have some information for you to start with. It's the first viability assessment carried out in respect of the Bewley development. Members will see that it concludes that it's not viable to deliver affordable housing going beyond the 27% minimum requirement contained within the Section 106 agreement. Before we go any further, can I just emphasise to members of the committee that this report is for information and noting only. The reason is that the viability assessment is essentially a number crunching exercise that has to be carried out in accordance with inputs and parameters set out in the Section 106 agreement. There is no scope to deviate from or add to these inputs or parameters. Also, our own external viability consultants have gone through the assessment with a fine-tooth comb, and having identified and resolved and corrected certain issues, are now satisfied that the end product is correct. Councillor Fuller has put some technical questions to Karen in advance of this meeting, and that he has received a full response for her. So therefore, I don't propose that we go into a debate about this matter, but if you have any information, if you wish to speak to, I think it's Karen Short, during the week, then she will give you a written response. So that item is purely for noting. Okay. We then come to item 11, which is planning appeals, which I will allow you to look at in your own time. And I will leave it to you to finish that. And I will finish the meeting. Thanks everybody for taking part. And as usual, it's really more difficult on computers, but we'll get there. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.